9.
Well, it's 11:30 in Beijing.
8:30 in Karachi.
And this is your prime time 9 o'clock news bulletin here in Colombo, coming to you live and direct from the News First newsroom. I'm Shane Silva.
And I'm Nicola D'Zoiza.
Kenya says the domestic terminal of the fire-damaged airport in Nairobi will be prepared for international flights tomorrow.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, family members hold funeral services for 4 teenagers killed when a bomb exploded during a nighttime soccer match in a poor district of Karachi.
Well, the News First International desk will, of course, keep you updated in our international segment.
But first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines.
Headlines on News First at 9.
The Archbishop of Colombo says that he does not approve shooting at and assaults on unarmed civilians who were demonstrating over a drinking water issue in Rathpaswala.
The Congress of Religions points out that it is wrong to consider all protests as anti-government protests.
A number of factions voiced their objections over the unrest in Valivaria.
News First at 9.
Now, in the wake of the tense situation that arose on the 1st of this month in Rathpaswala, several civil society organizations and multi-religious societies have protested outside the Fort Railway Station today.
Yes, Shane, let's take a look at that story later. But first, the final rites for 19-year-old Ravishan Pereira, the second student to have been killed during the unrest in Valivaria, were performed today. Shane Ravishan was a student of St. Peter's College in Udukampula and preparing to sit for his advanced level examinations. Let's take a look.
Police and police special task force personnel were deployed in the area while Ravishan Pereira's final rites were being performed. Following religious observances that were held at Ravishan's residence, the cortege departed for the final rites. The final rites were performed at the Roman Catholic Cemetery in Valivaria. Meanwhile, the remains of 29-year-old Nilantha Pushpakumar, the third victim of the unrest in Valivaria, have been brought to his residence in Udahatan, Nagampala. Nilantha was employed at a private factory in Valivaria and was living at a rented house in the area. Nilantha Pushpakumar's final rites are to be performed tomorrow.
Meanwhile, a group including civil society representatives, multi-faith religious leaders and others engaged in a demonstration opposite the Fort Railway Station today in protest of the violence in Valivaria. Venerable Theripahe Siridharmatero, who staged a hunger strike over the drinking water problem in Rathpaswala, also participated in the demonstration.
The Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, says that while no one approves of the shooting at and assault on unarmed civilians who were demonstrating over the drinking water problem in Rathpaswala, he condemns the incident. Issuing a communique, the Archbishop says that he was deeply shocked and distressed by the unfortunate situation that arose in Rathpaswala. His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit said that he severely condemns the inhumane attack on a group of civilians who sought refuge at St. Anthony's Church in Valivaria by a section of security forces personnel. It is a sacrilege for anyone to enter such sacred precincts with arms in their hands and behave in a violent manner there. Such actions cannot be accepted by anyone. It is always necessary that we preserve the sanctity of sacred premises of any religion and respect the people who enter such premises seeking protection. We firmly request the government to conduct an impartial inquiry into the incident in which innocent people had been killed. We request that those found guilty be punished without consideration of rank or status. Meanwhile, the Congress of Religions too issued a communique this afternoon regarding the unrest that broke out in Valivaria. The communique reads that if the people acted in a disruptive manner during the protest, the causes for such behavior are justified. The communique reads that the Congress of Religions believes that the security forces went beyond their limits to control the demonstration. The communique bears the signatures of multi-faith religious leaders including Venerable Ittapane Dhammalankara Thera, Professor Venerable Bellamwila Vimalaratana Thera, Venerable Brahman Watte Sivali Thera, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, former Archbishop of the Lanka Council, Reverend Father Dulip Dikchikera, Reverend S.K. Sharma and others. The communique reads that if all demonstrations are deemed to be anti-government demonstrations, such consideration is completely wrong. The Congress of Religions notes that no problem arises without a cause, adding that the first step in such an instance should be to inquire into the cause and resolve the matter. Our attention should first be drawn towards the intervention of the army. This is a serious factor. Following this incident, 3 people were killed and a large number were injured. Now the authorities involved are submitting various excuses. In such an instance, the government should not be taking the side of the factory owner. They should be taking the side of the people, on behalf of the people.
ආණ්ඩුව පෙනී සිටිය යුත්තේ මේ ෆැක්ටරි අයිතිකාරය වෙනුවෙන් නෙමෙයි. පෙනී සිටිය යුත්තේ මහජනයාගේ පැත්තේ. මේ මහජනයා වෙනුවෙන්.
අපි තුමු මාවිලාරුවෙන් පටන් ගත්තු දේවල්
If what started in Mavilaru has ended up in a conflict in Rathupaswala, and if the soil of Rathupaswala is to literally be made red by blood, then there is a problem with regard to our democracy. It is a problem with the security of human life. We have to clear the road when privileged VIPs pass by. The government can close the roads whenever it wants, make them one-way roads when it wishes. When the people have a problem and the government cannot hear them, and the people bring their problem to the streets, then they have a problem.
ආණ්ඩුවට පුළුවන් පාරවල් තනිමං කරන්න. ඒවත් ජනතාවට තමන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති වෙලා මේ ආණ්ඩුවට ඇහෙන්නේ නැති වුණාම පාරකට බැස්සාම අන්න ඒ පාරට බැසීම ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
අයතු ජනරාශියක් තිබෙනවා කියා උපකල්පනය කළත්
Even if they conclude that there was a group of people acting in a disruptive manner, then either a magistrate or the police must go there first and request that the people disperse. After they make this request, if they do not disperse, then the magistrate or the police can officially, under Section 95, they have the ability to deploy the police and use minimal force to disperse them. This did not happen. Next, if the superintendent of police, the magistrate or the district secretary feel that they require the assistance of the police, then they can bring in their army. What the government should do now is uncover whether the superintendent of police or the magistrate or the district secretary requested that brigadier and the army to come there.
දිසාපතිවරයා එම ස්ථානයට අර බ්‍රිගේඩියවරයාටයි හමුදාවටයි එන්න ඉල්ලීමක් කරාද කියලා මුලින්ම රජය ප්‍රකාශ කළ යුතුයි.
They shot at those who asked for their pensions. They shot at fishermen who asked for fuel subsidies. They shot at people who asked for water as well. 1 in Katunayaka, 1 in Chilau, and now 3 in Valivaria. Officially it is 3. We do not know what the unofficial number. What we have to say here is that the government must carry out its responsibility. The Environment Ministry must carry out its responsibilities, and the army must carry out the responsibilities of the army.
Meanwhile, a group including civil society representatives, multi-faith religious leaders and others engaged in a demonstration opposite the Fort Railway Station today in protest of the violence in Valivaria. Venerable Teripahasri Dhammatera, who staged a hunger strike over the drinking water problem in Rathupaswala, also participated in this demonstration. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom's Minister of Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, Alistair Burt, has requested Sri Lankan authorities to protect the people's right to peaceful demonstration. Burt made this request via a post on the social networking site Twitter and through a statement regarding the recent unrest in Valivaria. Burt said that he notes with serious concern emerging reports of the violent disruption of peaceful protests in Valivaria, in which at least 3 people died. Alistair Burt also asked that the authorities ensure that a swift and transparent investigation is carried out. Burt says that his thoughts are with the families of those who were killed or injured.
There was a release issued by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office a couple of hours ago by MP Alistair Burt saying that they are concerned about the incident in Valivaria and the incident that occurred. Wouldn't incidents of this nature undermine the Commonwealth summit that will be held in November?
There are incidents which take place, developments which occur. that is a part of life. That is not extraordinary, and as far as this particular incident is concerned, government is concerned about what has happened and is proceeding to embark on an inquiry, an independent, impartial inquiry to ascertain the circumstances in which this happened. And I want to state categorically on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka that ours is not a defensive posture at all. We welcome the opportunity to showcase the achievements of this island.
Despite the announcement of conducting independent inquiries, assassination of senior journalist Lasantha Wickrematunge, killing of Roshan Chanaka, an employee at the Free Trade Zone, assassination of former MP Bharata Lakshman Premachandra, murder of Provincial Councillor Hasitha Madawala. What happened to the independent inquiries conducted on these incidents?
Meanwhile, a group of politicians, civil society activists, veteran diplomats, professionals and journalists, amongst others, have signed an appeal entitled Justice for Valiveria, Time for Indignation. The appeal for justice questions as to what confidence people can have in a state that uses live ammunition against its own unarmed citizens whose peaceful protest for drinking water cannot by any stretch of imagination be compared with participation in hostilities in an armed conflict situation. Of course, we'll have the details on this story later on in the news.
Up next is the newspaper cartoon of the day, which we selected from amongst today's English newspapers.
Meanwhile, a group of politicians, civil society activists, veteran diplomats, professionals and journalists, amongst others, have signed an appeal entitled Justice for Valiveria, Time for Indignation. The signatories to this appeal include prominent personalities such as the former Sri Lankan permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, Tamara Kunanayakam, the former permanent representative to the UN in New York, Dr. Dayan Jayatilaka, parliamentarian Dr. Rajiva Vijayasinghe and senior lawyer J.C. Valiamuna.
Signatories to this appeal note that the shooting of unarmed civilians in Valiveria and Balumahara by army soldiers equipped with T-56 assault rifles, armoured vehicles and bulletproof vests is of unusual gravity for the consequences it will certainly have on the confidence placed by the ordinary citizen on those in power. The appeal for justice questions as to what confidence people can have in a state that uses live ammunition against its own unarmed citizens whose peaceful protest for drinking water cannot by any stretch of imagination be compared with participation in hostilities in an armed conflict situation. The appeal seeks answers to the following questions. Who gave the army orders to intervene and deploy as it did? Who gave the army orders to fire? Did the law enforcement authorities exhaust all other means available to them before calling in the army? Did those who directed the operation identify an external enemy or a lethally armed internal enemy to justify army intervention? Who decided to impose the unofficial curfew, electricity blackout, curtailment of telephone transmission and stoppage of transport along the Colombo-Kandy road? Why were representatives of the media deliberately targeted? When the military spokesman Brigadier Ruwan Wanigasuriya seeks to justify army action by arguing that a certain group had attempted to quote-unquote fish in troubled waters and denies despite evidence to the contrary the attacks on journalists, does this reflect the position of the government? Even if the claim by the Ministry of Defence is true that a political group was indeed involved in organising the protest action, since when does that give the army the right to fire live bullets at unarmed civilians? The people have a right to know the truth. How many have been killed? How many injured? How many arrested? How many disappeared?
Leonardo da Vinci was an Italian Renaissance polymath, painter, sculptor, architect and mathematician. Tonight on Words of Wisdom, we take a look at the great master's thoughts on authority.
Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence. Leonardo da Vinci.